Okay, so after we did Legacy, we did
Yes.
Ties That Bind.
Yes.
And Ties That Bind, even though the runtime on that's about 8 or 9 minutes, you did more visual effects in that short sequence than I mean, that pretty much just wiped the floor with Legacy. I mean, you did a lot more effects, a lot more dynamic effects, I a lot more. I got to say, impressive effects.
Thank you.
They were. I mean, I showed those visual effects to a lot of people. That short. I used to have it on my phone. Everywhere I'd go, I'd show it, and everybody's just like really impressed with the work you did in that scene.
Wow. Well, when you speak to them, tell them I said thank you. You
There's
know,
too
it's
many.
it's.
We'll, we'll just thank you all that saw it. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Greg
Thank
appreciates
you.
the
I do.
admiration.
Anytime anybody says, hey, that looks good or that looks okay, that'll put me on top of the world. That really will.
The
Um,
effects there were really great, really great.
I tell
And
you what.
you ended up like redoing those too.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
In
I
fact,
don't remember.
the version that is on YouTube doesn't have all of the
Yeah, it
redone
doesn't have the
special
new
effects.
effects.
Yeah,
Yeah, does it have any of the newer ones?
it has a few of them, but not all of them. And I would still love to do a version of it that of course, I'd ask to redo them yet again. I'd ask to
Well,
redo the effects yet
we
again.
we actually have, we never really finished that scene to
I
a
know.
point where the sound was put together and the effects and all that kind of stuff. But we plan on finishing that scene, and I thought about asking you if you would want to do those effects again
I would gladly do them again. I would.
because nobody's seen the newer effects that you've done.
Yeah.
But the newer effects to me are even more impressive,
Thank you.
especially the
That
shot
means
of
a lot.
the pods leaving the saucer.
Yeah, and that's actually one that I'd like to revisit yet again. Because I think that was one of the few times I tried to go for a wow factor, and
You
it didn't
you
quite meet my expectations.
you did a lot in that little preview in terms of different things. You did a lot.
I
Like, I mean, you had all these different angles, you had all these different shadows. The background looked really cool. I mean, you did a lot for that
Yeah, I
preview.
did. Yeah, I tell you what, the ties that bind just grabbed hold of me and would not let go.
I think you were having fun with the. I
I
mean,
was.
when I see those effects, I see Craig just having fun doing
Yeah.
those.
It's just the whole story grabbed hold of me, and I was just like, I was so hyped to tell that story. And
And
I
a
think
lot of people don't know Craig, but they don't know that you actually participated in the writing
I
of
know,
the ties that
yeah,
bind. Now, a lot of people don't know you are an accomplished writer.
yeah. Well, I don't know if accomplished is the right word.
It is.
Well, thank you very much. I have my master's in English writing, and I've done my fair share of writing, and
There
I've
you
been,
go.
yeah, and I've had a few things published here and there over the years, but the way everything came together with the ties that bind, as I remember it, and you can correct me if I get anything wrong, is you had a script and Brady kind of had a script, and you guys were kind of not arguing because you guys don't argue, I don't think, but
No.
you were you know kind of stuck over the merits of these two scripts, and I said, give me the scripts. I was like, please give me the scripts and let me take a crack at it. Maybe what we need here is a third set of eyes. And and because you are so good at writing character, your characters leap to life. Any time I've read one of the scripts that you've sent me, that's what hits me more than anything else. And
Thank you.
in fact, I look for like my work later on. In the script, I'm like, oh yeah, what do I need to do here? I got so caught up. I get so caught up in reading the characters, reading the story that you've built and what these characters are like. I entirely forget that I should be reading this to see what my job is. Um, so you had this fantastic character-driven story for your ties that bind, and Brady's had a lot more. Was a lot more of the action-oriented. Was a lot more of the action-oriented stuff. And I was like, well, really, all these things have to do is kind of be folded together, and that was my main contribution,
Well,
was folding these things together.
one thing
And then,
about your version of the story is that you fleshed out a whole lot of it. The background for the bad guys and all that.
yes,
You added a whole lot of detail to their world building, and
yeah,
I remember that more after. That's kind of what I thought after I read your version of the story. I like the fact that you fleshed out a whole lot of it.
yeah, that was really important to me. Just because you don't want these paper cutout villains that are just evil. Nobody who we might call evil thinks of themselves as evil.
Yeah,
Bad
they
guys don't
probably
think of themselves
yeah
as
they
bad
probably
guys.
don't think they're evil.
No, they don't think of themselves as bad
Hi,
guys at
Master
all.
Solzar.
So
We've captured
it
two
was really
alive in the command
important that
center. The other warden parties would not
that
yet
the
reported in with news of
Sukulon
further survivors.
not be, even though they are bad guys to our people, they not they not feel like the bad guys. So to do that, I had to do this deep dive into their culture, which I just kind of made up along the way, and ended up in the script that I wrote that would never we'd never end up using it anyway, because it's just dull. I mean, it's not good. It's not good filmmaking to have two people just yapping about a culture. It's stuff you have to show, instead of just talk about. But I just, like I said, the ties that bind just got into my skin, and I was just like, everything about it just somehow lit this fire in me, and and so I collaborated with you and Brady on the writing. There was the the design of the Valor's crew badges. I had
Hmm.
I had done that too, because I remember there was
Yeah.
something that you posted
You-
something on Facebook saying we need we need crew badge, we need a design for the crew badges for the Valor, and
Yeah, you
all
were kind of like, let me take a crack at it, and once again, I
I
think you sent me maybe 3 designs.
actually I sent one, because
Just
because you had put that on Facebook.
just the one we used.
Yeah, well, it wasn't quite the one we used. You asked me to revise it slightly, but you had posted that on Facebook, and I was instantly like, okay, I see this, and I whipped it together and posted it like 10 minutes after you had posted your thing. I was like, how about this? Yeah, and you were like, okay, I like that, but can you change this, this one thing, and this one thing? I was like, sure, and I did that, and then it was like, okay, that's it, that's good. And unfortunately, nobody else got a chance to toss their designs into the ring. I felt kind of bad.
And that design looked. I really liked it. A lot of people really liked that design.
I the big thing about the Valor is I was trying to evoke NASA all over the place for some reason. So the design of their badges kind of reflects like the Earth with the NASA symbol, like the Earth with the red streak going around it. I kind of modeled it on that. The escape pods used, that the Valor uses when the crew does abandon ship, they look a lot like um, the Apollo capsules.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Those two things, the escape pods and the Valor. You sent me detailed pictures,
Yeah,
describing, especially on the escape pods. There were a lot of detailed pictures you sent on how it looked inside, how many people it would hold, and everything.
that's how much the story grabbed hold of me, Michael. It's like, even though I knew we were never going to see the inside of one of those escape pods, I designed the whole inside of it anyway.
Well, I wonder if
Yeah,
anybody noticed you put a little CGI guy in there. I wonder if they noticed that.
I hope so. It was a lot of work to try. It was a lot of work to get the camera and that model to position, into position so that you can see a crew member in that window for the second and a half that
Yeah,
he's
and
there.
I remember saying, Craig, is there any way you can show this person in there a little bit longer? And your response was, well, we run the risk of it being seen as a CGI character,
Yeah.
so I'm really limited on what I can do in terms of how I can show this guy. But I think the second time around, you did show more of him in the
I'm
newer.
yeah. I managed to get probably another 30 frames, another second out of it. But I did not. That was one of the things I was worried about. I'm like, no, I don't want to show this for too long, because then you'll see it's just a static, it's just a static CG man, figure.
What's kind of funny, Craig, is we're talking about fan films, and there's lots of different fan films, and just from what we're talking about, it just shows you. I don't even know, is it really even practical that we're making a fan film and it really gets this detailed? I mean, it. I mean, it just seems like so much work. You kind of think like, are these guys having fun here? Or I mean, there's really a lot of behind the scenes stuff that go into this.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I went overboard with the ties that bind.
Yeah.
I did not need to design the inside of that escape pod.
And it's like, I don't envy the fan film guys that just, get a camera and aim it and just shoot. They don't have to worry about all this stuff. But we just, and a lot of fan films, it's so detailed behind the scenes on what the people are doing to put these things together. And, I mean, a lot goes into this, a lot more than you would think go into it.
Yes, exactly. Well, I think for me, a lot of that comes from you, because you do put a lot into these scripts. So, I feel that, I have to at least match that level of detail.
I feel like you've always given your best.
I have always very much tried. And I don't think I've ever thought, I can just skate on this one.
You've never struck me as the type of guy to say, I'm just going to do this so I can avoid taking this shortcut here.
Yeah.
I mean, when I ask you for a ship and you send me 3 ships and 3 schematics of the ship and all these details, I mean, that tells you pretty much there that you're really working on this stuff.
That I think that comes from my background in sales. I was in sales for many, many years, most of my life, actually, in one form or another. And when it comes, if you're going to be successful in sales, you have to be able to present choices to a client. And even if and in that sense, I look at like what I do in terms of graphics or effects. I almost look at you as my client in that way. It's like, I want to be able to present him with options so that he can choose what he likes best. Doesn't matter what I like best. It's what you're going to like best. So,
And I think when you read the script for Ties That Bind, or at least the parts we shot, I think there was maybe a little bit of intimidation there, because you were going to be doing stuff that you hadn't done before.
Yeah.
And I remember when you were discussing the phaser beams, you were saying something like, I haven't done those yet. So I'm going to have to do a little work and see what works and how I can do it and all that. So I think that, the Ties That Bind seems to be the pivotal film for all of us, where we were just going to just really do something different. And
we had grand plans.
Yeah.
And then the guidelines happened.
Yeah.
And those grand plans kind of went away.
Yeah.
And I really don't want to say anything more about it in that regard.
But you did some really exciting things in that. I mean, I literally had so many people tell me just how great those effects were.
Thank you. I really, and I enjoyed doing them because that gave us a chance to do some things that you never saw before.
I mean,
Like the
literally, I had a person watch that scene where the Valor's just getting beat up,
yeah,
and one girl after watching that scene, she said it really hurt to see the ship get damaged like that. So I mean, that just goes to show you those effects
yeah.
were really
I
impactful.
and that means a lot to me because that's what you know any visual artist, and in that regard, I'm no different than you as a director, or you as a writer. You're trying to convey something emotional visually, and that's how you have to make these things work is on an emotional level, and so if you're going to have a ship in a battle, it um, it should hurt. You should feel that the same way as if it were two people fighting each other. It's like that should have an emotional impact on you. Whether it's Go Team or Owl. You know, um, that's that emotional impact has to be there, and so that's what I try to throw into the effects as much as possible. Is I'm looking for a way to visually service what the story is saying and what the live action characters are going through. You know,
You know, and one thing that as far as I know, up to the time of the ties that bind, was that we had never seen escape pods on a starship,
yeah,
and I don't remember too much as far as the script goes. I remember saying that the escape pods, but I never said where they were. I don't think.
yeah, no, no. You just mentioned
And
that it launched us.
so so what was the process for that? Because I mean, the script called for escape pods, but how did
Right.
you decide on where they would be and how it would look and all that?
Well, that was looking over the Valor, which is kind of like the Valor is an older version of a Constitution class ship. It's kind of like a precursor to the Constitution class ship. The model was designed and built by Dennis Russell Bailey.
Yes. I've
Uh,
actually written him and thanked him for allowing us
really?
to use that.
Yeah. Well,
And I even told him that it was a Bailey class starship, and he said
yes.
that basically he said he was pretty much honored to that we named the ship after him and all that.
Well, that's nice. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, because I had asked him if we could use it in the ship, in the show as well. I'm like, we kind of, we would like to use, your model here, but not as it was originally intended. And we're going to make some changes to it. And he was like, yeah, that's fine. That's not a problem at all. I think he was looking forward to seeing it actually. So, I kind of, looked at it as, the Valor being a Bailey class ship is kind of like, like an immediate precursor to the Constitution, which is why I tried to keep the numbering close, even though the numbering really doesn't mean anything when it comes to the registry numbers. They're all over the place, but I still wanted it to be close to the NCC 17. So I think I
Hmm.
used 14 for the Valor.
Yeah.
Um, but then it came down to Captain Friedman says abandoned ship, and and I'm reading the script and I'm like, how do they abandon ship? We don't. We've never seen this. And then you mentioned escape pods launching, and I'm like, never seen that either. Don't know
How
where they
how
are.
how
Yeah,
daunting was that when you first read that, and it's never been done in Star Trek, and you're thinking, what the heck?
very daunting
What
because
was the saucer always your first choice?
yes, immediately because it has the most surface area. So I was like, okay, they have to be in the saucer because that has the most overall surface area. But it's like from TNG forward, the ships had escape pods. You saw them on the hull of the ship. You knew exactly where they were.
Well, was the first time we ever
Yeah,
seen them? Was that in First Contact?
that was the first time I think we'd ever seen escape pods launching. Yes.
And I remember thinking they're so ugly. They look like pianos.
Yeah. Yeah. They this little
Did
like
did
these little.
did they come from the saucer?
Actually, they were all over the ship. Yeah, they
I don't
come, but
remember.
most of what you see in the movie is from the saucer. But like I said, we had no idea what a TOS escape pod looks like because they're certainly not
Yeah.
anywhere visible on the surface of a ship. So I thought, okay, well, what if some of the panels, the panels on the top of the saucer blow away? There's kind of explosive bolts that blow them away, and the escape pods are underneath those, and then the escape pods just launch straight up. And then I had that idea. Fantastic. What do they look like? And I didn't want them to just be boxes, or some kind of weird, you know, or a hexagonal shape. I didn't want them to be that simple, you know. And that's when the NASA idea just kind of carried over from it. I'm like, well, what if they looked like, you know, the old, Apollo capsules, but just turned upside down, so that the what would be the heat shield is actually on top. And once I started working on that, and of course, then I deluged you with all of these images of what the escape pod looked like inside and out. Because once I got the outside finished, I'm like, I have to design the inside of this thing. I just have to. So I went way overboard, and like to bring it all back around to what you had mentioned before about going this crazy, or going into such detail for a fan film. You know, is it, you know, is it crazy to do it? Maybe. Is it fun? Yes, it is so much fun. Wouldn't do it if it wasn't, and you wouldn't either. You cast people for the roles in your fan films. You don't just ask friends. You
Yeah.
know, you
I try to
actually
get the best person.
you go out and you look for actors who are available, and and will accept these roles, and perform these roles. Whereas, and this is not an indictment of fan films at all, but most fan films are made by friends. They are putting everything together, and then they're stepping in front of the camera and playing these roles, whether they can act or not. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But you go the extra step and try to find actors, real actors, whether they're from the stage. You look for performers where you could very easily ask friends
It
who will
just
say
makes
the
my job a
lines.
lot easier.
Yeah. Well, does it though? You got to go through a casting process.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Okay. Whereas, you can ask your friend, you can ask your friend Joe, hey, you want to play this part? And yeah, he'll read the lines, but very well, maybe not, but so you go through this process of trying to find the right people for the roles, the characters that you've created in your scenes. How can I do any less when it comes to the special effects than make them as realistic as possible in terms of how they look and the functionality of what you see on the screen. So I take my cues from you when it comes to that, and also because I have complete OCD and when it comes to a project, and if I start digging, I'm like a terrier. I won't stop digging until I'm 30 feet down, because if I get these ideas, I have to see them through. So I remember sending you all those shots of the escape pod, all those images of the escape pod outside and in, and you wrote back to me, these are amazing. You really didn't need to design the inside. You said we're never going to see the inside of it, and I wrote back, I know, but I wasn't doing anything else.
You know, and actually, Craig, after you had done the inside shot, I went to Brady and I said, we have to do a shot. I mean, I think there was a scene written or was going to be written where we see characters from the inside getting shot and the pod blowing up, because you had designed it so well. And I remember discussing with Brady, how can we do this to do a shot from the inside? And I think we would have done it had we
You know
had
what?
the.
You're right. You did write that, because I
I didn't know if I
remember.
wrote it or just thought about it, but
Well, I don't know if it actually got to the written part, but I remember you telling me that you were planning on doing this because some of the images I sent to you of the inside of the escape pod, the Valor's escape pod, showed like this is all you would need to build.
yeah,
Because it was just
yeah,
supposed to be like a quick close up, of one or two crew members in the window between them, where you see the Sukulon ship come up and start
yeah.
firing.
I think we could have done that.
And I was like, this is all you need to build is just two flats with the window cut out, you know, and two people sitting there. It's a real quick shot, So I do remember kind of putting that together, to help you, visualize that. But I guess unfortunately we didn't get to that. We never
So
got to
tell
that
me,
point.
once you designed the pods, what was the process of what went into figuring out where they were coming from? And while you're doing that, I'm going to change my headset.
Okay, was that we're getting too tight on your head?
No, it's run by battery, and I just got a battery warning.
Ah, okay. Okay. So, where? Okay, your question was where to place them.
Yeah, how did you decide on where to put those? I
Yeah,
mean, because you know the internal schematic of the ships, so where you put the escape pods, I don't know officially what is in that area
yeah.
of the ship.
Well, it kind of depends. When it came to the Valor, that being a Bailey class ship,
Yeah,
it could be very different.
it gave you more freedom.
Yes, exactly. I figured at the very least, it kind of on the inside would look like the Enterprise when Captain Pike was captain. The interiors were a lot different when Pike was the captain of the Enterprise than when Captain Kirk was. They redesigned a lot of the sets. So just going by that, I was like, okay, where could there be room for these? And it was like right as on the top of the saucer as it starts to crest upward into that little bulge in the center. And I thought, okay, I can place them in the correct little spots around.
Okay, so
And
we were discussing how you decided on the saucer because if I had done
yeah,
that scene, I might have just used the secondary hull, thinking, "Oh, that looks like there's a lot more space down there." But
yeah, but there really isn't because of the windows and stuff
uh,
that line the secondary hull pretty much shows you deck placement. The top of the saucer is the only place that doesn't have a whole lot of other stuff. Even like the underside of the saucer, there are windows under there. There's the phaser placements, the photon torpedo placements, the lower sensor, all that stuff. Where the top of the saucer is really the only empty space that doesn't where there doesn't
so
seem to be a whole lot of meaning, a lot of usable stuff that's used.
there was never a question for you then. It was going to be the saucer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, right off the bat. And then and then as I kind of worked out the details in my head, it became, because then I was like, well, are they out toward the end of the edges of the saucer? Is it in? So I kind of decided about a halfway mark, you know, um, just as that bulge starts to rise in the saucer, because I'm like, that's a good place where there would be like framework for the ship, for the ship internally and so on and so forth. That just worked a lot better for me. I'm like, oh, if there's any place that would have some empty space for these things, this is it. you know and I still made them pretty big. They are about 2 decks high, really. But I wanted, it's like I wanted them to. I was like, I don't want one of these things that houses like two people, because I was like, if you're going to have a lifeboat or you know, so, an escape pod, you want to kind of fit as many people as
Yeah,
possible into one.
realistically, it doesn't make any sense to have an escape pod that just holds one person. You're not going to get
Exactly.
all your crew out of there for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. So I thought, so they hold the one as I designed them. They hold 8.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's a pretty good number,
And
so
another cool thing is that like you ended up redoing that render. And I remember the first time I saw it, I was blown away. But I asked you to do one that was longer, and it was because I liked that effect.
yeah,
I wanted to see it longer. It was just
yeah. And I was happy to redo it because I actually think, the second time it turned out better.
yeah, it was
Um,
really cool the second time.
yeah, the first time I didn't quite, those darn camera movements. They're kind of the bane of my existence, are those camera movements. And the second time around, I got it much closer to what I was seeing in my head. And if we do get around to finishing that story in some way that makes sense and still remains within the confines that we presently find ourselves in, I'll be happy to do them again.
Well,
So
Brady and I, we kind of thought that once we redo the ties that bind, we probably wouldn't use that scene anymore.
yeah,
But we would still like to complete that scene and just have it as a finished.
yeah,
So I want to at least complete it and make it really professionally done and finished.
yeah.
So, I mean, if you want to redo the effects for it, that's cool with me.
Okay, yeah. If we can figure out how we would re-edit that first part of it, and then be able to tell the rest of the story, or let me say
Well,
this, the rest of a story.
I'm thinking that in a new story, that scene probably wouldn't be in it.
Yeah, I
Or,
can
or,
understand
or
that.
as I told Brady, maybe we could do it somehow in a flashback or something, or
Yeah,
snippets. It's a shame though because it's such a good scene to not
yeah.
use it.
No, it is. Yeah, and it was so much fun to do, even though, you know, trying to figure out the logistics of those escape pods launching was, it's like, because I had to blow away the panels, the panels on the outer hull of the Valor, and they had to move away in
Yeah,
a certain
and
fashion.
I remember somebody leaving a comment saying, "Well, how come the escape pod? What stops the escape pod from hitting the panel blowing away?"
Yeah, and
Well, my
I'm like,
thought is there's probably some kind of automatic guidance system on there that prevents it from smashing into something.
yeah,
But
yeah,
that's
or
just
the yeah, or the yeah, just the explosive bolts. It's like, no, well, you don't want it to pop straight up because that's the way that the escape pod's going. So you have the explosive bolt set up to move it out. Yeah, so they spin. So they move away from the ship, horizontally, and then the escape pod launches vertically. I'm like, it's a pretty simple thing.
when you revise that shot. Do you thinking about your last render of that? Do you think it would be pretty much the same, or would you do it at a different?
I would do it a little bit. I wouldn't have, even though I liked the way it turned out in the remake. When we redid it, I wouldn't have such a sweeping camera movement, because the way I have it set up is the camera starts from like behind the saucer on the right hand side, and it sweeps around, and you see you see escape pods lifting off as it goes, and then the camera kind of zooms in on the last one as it launches. And I wouldn't quite have that sweeping, that such a wide movement of the camera, because things had to go so quickly that you sort of you might miss what's going on. I'd have it much tighter, playing across the primary, the saucer section, so that you can really get a feel for what's happening, before that last one launches that we follow.
So with that, I kind of see this like really close up shot of just seeing panels just popping, the
Yeah,
camera kind of going across as it pops up, and then just this really kind of huge saucer that it takes up
yeah,
the whole screen. But I don't know.
yeah,
That's just kind of something I envision.
yeah,
But I mean, either way, that second render you did of that, I mean, it greatly was improved. I thought it was just really. I think it's the kind of shot that people saw and they kind of thought, wow, because that's just something you don't see. Or you still don't see it. I haven't seen
yeah,
it in another film since. I mean, not a
yeah.
fan film.
Yeah, I haven't. I don't think I've seen anything quite like that either. But it was, as much, it was a. I will admit, it was a big headache, just figuring out the logistics, because it's actually one long shot of the camera swinging around as the pods launch, and then the camera follows the last pod up until it reaches the others, and then the Sukulon ship comes from off camera and starts firing on the escape pods, and then the escape pods start moving out to try and escape, to get away from the Sukulon ship firing on them. And it's all one long shot. And trying to figure that out, going over, I was writing stuff down.
Yeah, that's
You should have seen my notes, like the beats that I was following. It's
that's
like,
one thing I noticed for the preview. Your special effects sequences were a lot longer than you had
yeah,
done, especially for Legacy. I mean, there were some that were on the screen for maybe 10 seconds. I mean,
yeah,
and the ship models and the Sukalon model was really, you seen a lot of detail in them this time around, because in
yeah.
Legacy they were kind of in the distance, but in this one they looked better.
Yeah, I added a lot more detail to the Sukulon ship because I knew you were going to see it, you know, up close a lot, and you were going to get a chance to get a kind of look at its scale, which you really don't get in Legacy. So I decided to add a lot more detail to it to clean up a lot of the detail that was on it already, so that it can hold up to that kind of scrutiny. Because one of the things that I really don't like about some CGI, some Star Trek CGI, but CGI in general, is if you get close to a ship, you start seeing what the shapes are made of. The spheres start having these facets to them that show you that it's really kind of it's a low resolution
Not
model.
not like the models in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, where the closer
Exactly.
you got, the better they looked.
Exactly. It's like if you get close to a CG model and you can see the problems, you can see where the edges are, the facets of the edges. That drives me crazy. So I always overbuild my models so that I can go from a far shot to a closer shot without having to switch things up somehow. That might have driven Brady crazy when he did the effects for animals, because I'm sure that his render times might have been quicker with um, less less heavy models, since I overbuild mine.
He was pretty impressed with that model,
Yeah, I and that means a lot to me. It really does.
and the Dragon
The Dragon
model. He
model,
really
that
loved
model's
those.
that the Dragon model's just fun. It's fun. It's fun. It's like this evil little sports car. That's kind of how I envisioned it. It's just like this, just the way it's designed. It fits in with the TOS era very well, but it just kind of has this, mean, aggressive look to it. But it also looks like it could go really, really fast at impulse speeds, And I thought, it, like I said, it's kind of this mean kind of sports car look to it, and I really like that a lot. And he actually really brought that out in the effects. The way he has them moving was very much the way I envisioned it. So I was like, wow, he got that exactly right. So I felt good about that.